The escape pod drifted through the cold darkness of space like a forgotten piece of metal. Inside, the air was thin and getting thinner. The small lights on the control panel blinked red, warning of danger that Nara already knew too well. Life support was failing. They had maybe 6 hours left, maybe less. Nara sat against the cold wall of the pod, her silver skin pale from exhaustion. Her violet eyes, once bright and full of life, now looked tired and empty. In her arms, her youngest daughter slept peacefully, not knowing that each breath might be one of her last. Beside Nara, her other 2 daughters lay on a thin blanket. The eldest, at 8 cycles old, had finally fallen asleep after crying for hours. Only 5 cycles held her older sister's hand even in sleep. 3 daughters, 3 beautiful, innocent daughters, and because of them, Nara was going to die. She remembered the day everything changed. It was supposed to be a celebration, the birth of her 3rd child. The whole empire had waited to hear the news. Would it finally be a son? Would the Empress finally give High Commander Ho the male heir he demanded? When the medical officer announced it was another daughter, the room went silent. Nara had looked at her newborn baby with love, but when she looked up at her mate, she saw only hatred. Cold, burning hatred. 3 failures, Ho had said, his voice like ice. 3 times you have shamed me. 3 times you have proven your blood is weak. The people believed that strength flowed through male children. Sons carried power. Sons built empires. Sons were worthy of love and life. Daughters were tolerated at best. But an empress who could only produce daughters, that was unforgivable. That was a curse. The Council of Elders met the very next day. Nara was not allowed to speak. She could only stand there holding her newborn while old men decided her fate. They called her genetically defective. They said her daughters carried her weakness and would spread it if allowed to live. The sentence was death, for her, for all 3 of her children. Ho did not argue. He did not try to save them. He simply nodded and said, "Do what must be done." Nara had loved him once, or she thought she had. Now she understood that to Ho she was never a partner. She was a tool, a machine to produce heirs, and when the machine failed, it was thrown away. But Nara was not ready to be thrown away, and she would die 1,000 deaths before she let anyone touch her daughters. The escape happened during the Feast of Ancestors, when the palace was full of drunk nobles and lazy guards. Nara had planned for weeks. She stole access codes. She mapped the servant tunnels. She hid food and water in small amounts so no one would notice. When the moment came, she moved like a shadow. She woke and put a finger to her lips and carried against her chest. They walked through dark hallways, past sleeping guards, down into the lower levels where the cargo pods waited. The pod was small. It was meant for transporting goods, not people, but it had basic life support and an emergency beacon. It would have to be enough. As the pod launched into space, Nara looked back at the planet she had called home for 15 cycles. The lights of the capital city glittered like jewels. Somewhere down there in the Grand Palace, Ho was probably enjoying the feast, not knowing his prey had escaped. By morning he would know, and he would hunt her across the galaxy. That was 12 days ago. 12 days of drifting through empty space, rationing food and water, watching the life support slowly die. Nara had sent distress signals, but this was the outer rim. Few ships traveled here. The chances of rescue were almost zero. Stirred in her sleep and opened her eyes. She looked up at her mother with a question she was too afraid to ask. "Go back to sleep, my love," Nara whispered. "Mother, are we going to die?" The question hit Nara like a physical blow. Was only 8, but she was smart, too smart. She had heard the warnings. She knew what the red lights meant. Nara pulled her daughter close. "I will not let that happen. But if the air runs out, then I will breathe for you. I will give you every breath in my body. You and your sisters will live, I promise you." It was a promise she did not know how to keep, but she made it anyway because that is what mothers do. They promise the impossible and then find a way to make it real. Woke up next, rubbing her eyes. I'm hungry, mother. There was no food left. Nara had given her last portion to the children yesterday. I know, little one, try to sleep. When you wake up, things will be better. Another lie, another impossible promise. Nara looked out the small window at the endless stars. She had prayed to those stars every night since the escape. She did not pray for herself. She only prayed for her daughters. Let them live, she begged. Let them find a world where daughters are not killed for being born. Let them know kindness. Let them know love. The stars did not answer. They never did. Hours passed. The air grew thinner. Nara felt dizzy, her thoughts becoming slow and confused. She held her daughters, trying to keep them warm as the heating system failed. This is the end, she thought. I tried so hard and it was not enough. She closed her eyes, ready to let go. Then a light. At first, Nara thought she was imagining it. A bright beam cutting through the darkness, sweeping across the pod. She blinked, forcing her tired eyes to focus. There was a ship out there. The communication panel crackled to life. A voice came through, speaking a language Nara did not recognize. Then it switched to common galactic tongue. Unknown vessel, this is the cargo ship Wanderer. We have detected your distress signal. Prepare for retrieval. Nara's heart pounded. A ship, a real ship. But who were they? Hunters, pirates, slavers. In this part of space, rescue could be worse than death. But she had no choice. Her daughters were dying. She would face any danger for even a small chance to save them. Please, she spoke into the communicator, her voice weak. I have children. They need help, please. There was a pause. Then the voice returned, softer this time. Hold on, we're coming to get you. Nara held her daughters and watched the ship approach. It was not. The design was strange, unfamiliar. She did not know what species crewed it or what they would do when they found her. But for the first time in 12 days, she felt something she thought she had lost forever. Hope. Captain Sung stood at the airlock, watching through the small window as his crew pulled the damaged pod into the cargo bay. His first mate, one, stood beside him with her arms crossed and a worried look on her face. Captain, I need to say this again. This is a bad idea. You have said it 5 times already. And I will say it 5 more. That pod has markings. The do not lose their people by accident. Whoever is in there is either a criminal or a fugitive. Either way, trouble follows. Sung understood her concern. The Empire was powerful and dangerous. They had a reputation for cruelty and a long memory for those who crossed them. Getting involved with problems was like putting your hand in a fire and hoping not to get burned. But he had heard the voice on the communicator. A woman's voice, weak and desperate, saying she had children who needed help. Sung was many things. He was a cargo captain, a former military officer, a man who had seen too much war and too much death. But he was not the kind of man who could fly away and let children die in the darkness of space. Open the airlock, he said. One sighed but did as she was told. The heavy door slid open with a hiss of escaping air. The pod was small and damaged. Burn marks covered its surface and several panels were missing. Sung walked to it and looked through the cracked window. What he saw made his heart stop. A woman sat inside, her silver skin almost gray from lack of oxygen. Her eyes were closed and she held 3 small children against her body. The children were not moving. For a terrible moment, Sung thought they were all dead. Then the woman's eyes opened. Violet eyes filled with fear and desperation and something else, something fierce, the look of a mother ready to fight to her last breath. Get the medical kit, Sung shouted, now. He forced open the pod door. The air inside was thin and stale, barely enough to keep someone alive. The woman tried to speak, but no words came out. She held her children as if expecting him to take them. It's okay, Sung said softly. I'm not going to hurt you, I'm here to help. He reached out slowly, carefully, like approaching a wounded animal. The woman watched him with those violet eyes, ready to strike if he made a wrong move. Sung picked up the smallest child first, a baby who could not be more than 2 cycles old. The baby was cold but breathing. He handed her to one who had arrived with the medical kit. Get her to the medical bay. Oxygen and warmth, go. One hesitated for just a moment, looking at the alien child in her arms. Then she nodded and ran. Sung turned back to the pod. The 2 other children were awake now, looking at him with wide, frightened eyes. The older one, maybe 7 or 8 years old, put herself between him and her younger sister. It's okay, Sung said again. I promise. I'm going to help your mother and then I'm going to help you. Can you walk? The older girl looked at her mother. The woman gave a tiny nod. Slowly, carefully, the 2 children climbed out of the pod. A crew member wrapped them in warm blankets and led them toward the medical bay. Now only the woman remained. She tried to stand, but her legs gave out. Sung caught her before she fell. I've got you, he said. She was lighter than he expected, her body thin from hunger and exhaustion. He carried her through the corridors of his ship, past crew members who stopped and stared. On their ship, an alien Empress, though they did not know it yet. In the medical bay, the scene was chaotic but controlled. The ship's medic, a young man named, worked quickly to check the children. The baby was in an oxygen chamber, her color already improving. The 2 older girls sat on a bed holding hands, watching everything with careful eyes. Sung laid the woman on a bed. She grabbed his arm with surprising strength. My children, she whispered. Where are my children? They're here, they're safe, look. He turned her head so she could see them. When her eyes found her daughters, alive and breathing, tears rolled down her silver cheeks. Thank you, she breathed, thank you. Then she lost consciousness. It took 3 hours for the woman to wake up again. In that time, Sung learned several things. First, the children were remarkably healthy considering their ordeal. They were hungry and tired but not seriously harmed. Second, the older girl's name was, the middle one was, and the baby was Ah. Third, they were terrified of him. When Sung entered the medical bay with food, immediately moved in front of her sisters, just as she had in the pod. I brought something to eat, he said, keeping his voice gentle. Are you hungry? Did not answer. Her body was tense, ready to fight or run. Sung set the food on a table and stepped back. I'll leave it here. You can eat when you're ready. He sat in a chair by the door, far enough to not seem threatening but close enough to watch. After several minutes, his stomach growled loudly. The little girl looked at the food with desperate eyes. It's okay, Sung said. It's just bread and fruit, nothing strange. Looked at her sister. Stomach was growling too. Finally, the older girl nodded. The 2 children ate like they had not seen food in days, because they probably hadn't. Sung felt a cold anger building in his chest. Who were these people running from? Who had starved children and left them to die in space? The woman woke up while her daughters were eating. Her eyes snapped open, alert and afraid, and she tried to sit up. Easy, Sung said, moving to her side. You're safe, your daughters are right here. She saw them eating and relaxed slightly, but she still watched Sung with suspicion. Who are you? She asked. What species? My name is Sung, I'm human. This is my ship, the Wanderer. Human, she repeated the word like she was tasting it. I have heard of humans, a young species, weak, no empire. We prefer independent, Sung said with a small smile. Can I ask your name? She hesitated, then Nara. Nara, that's pretty. He handed her a cup of water. Can you tell me what happened? Why were you in that pod? Nara's face went hard. Why do you want to know? Because someone put a mother and 3 children in a cargo pod and left them to die. And I want to know what kind of monster does that. Nara studied him for a long moment. She was looking for lies, for hidden motives, for the trap she was sure existed. She found none. "My mate," she finally said, "and my people, they wanted us dead because I gave birth to daughters instead of sons." Sung stared at her. He was sure he had misunderstood. "They wanted to kill you because your children are girls. In the Empire, daughters are worthless. An empress who cannot produce a male heir is defective, cursed. The council sentenced us to death, all 4 of us." The anger in Sung's chest turned to fire. He looked at the 3 children, at their innocent faces, at the way they ate bread like it was treasure. Someone wanted them dead because they were girls. "That," Sung said slowly, "is the most insane thing I have ever heard." Nara's eyes widened. She had expected many reactions: disgust, agreement, perhaps even an offer to return her for reward, but not this, not anger on her behalf. "In my world," Sung continued, "daughters are treasures. My own mother raised 3 daughters and she was the proudest woman in our village. Anyone who kills children for being born female is not civilized. They are monsters." Nara felt something crack inside her chest. A wall she had built over many cycles, a wall that protected her from hope and disappointment and pain. This human, this stranger from a weak species with no empire, had just given her something no one in her own world ever had. He had told her that her daughters were worthy of life. "You are safe here," Sung said. "For as long as you need, no one will hurt you or your children on my ship. I give you my word." Nara did not know if she could trust his word. She did not know if she could trust anything. But looking into his eyes, she wanted to try. 2 weeks passed on the Wanderer. 2 weeks of healing, of eating proper meals, of sleeping in warm beds. 2 weeks that changed everything Nara thought she knew about the universe. At first, she watched the humans with constant suspicion. She waited for the kindness to end, for the true purpose to reveal itself. In her experience, no one helped others without wanting something in return. Ho had taught her that lesson well. But the humans continued to surprise her. It started with small things. 1. The first mate who had argued against rescuing them brought extra blankets to their room without being asked. The medic checked on the children every day, making sure they were gaining weight and getting stronger. The cook, a cheerful man named Minho, prepared special meals because he learned that could not eat certain human foods. No one asked for payment. No one demanded anything. They simply helped because helping was the right thing to do. The children adapted faster than Nara expected. Remained careful and quiet, but she slowly began to relax. She spent hours in the ship's small kitchen, watching Minho cook and asking questions about human food. Minho was patient with her, explaining every step, letting her taste ingredients, teaching her recipes. "She has talent," Minho told Nara one day. "Good instincts, she will be a fine cook someday." Nara did not know what to say. Daughters were not taught skills. They were not expected to become anything. They existed only to be married off to powerful families, tools for political alliances. The idea that could learn, could grow, could become something. It was almost too wonderful to believe. Transformation was even more dramatic. The curious 5-year-old had no fear of the humans at all. She followed Captain Sung everywhere, asking endless questions. Why did the ship make that noise? How did the engines work? What were the stars made of? Could she touch that button? Sung never got annoyed. He answered every question seriously, treating like a student rather than a pest. He showed her star maps and taught her the names of constellations. He let her sit in the pilot's chair and pretend to fly the ship. He gave her a small notebook and told her to write down everything she learned. "She is very smart," Sung told Nara. "Her mind works fast. She asks better questions than some of my crew." Nara watched her daughter sitting in the captain's chair, studying the control panel with intense focus. In the Empire, would have been married off at 16 to some minor lord. Her intelligence would have been wasted, her curiosity crushed. Here on this small human ship, she was treated like she mattered. Even baby Ah thrived. The crew members took turns holding her, playing with her, making her laugh. One, despite her tough attitude, turned into a completely different person around the baby. She made silly faces and funny sounds, and Ah giggled with pure joy. "I thought you did not want us here," Nara said to one day. One shrugged, not taking her eyes off Ah. "I was worried about danger. I still am, but that does not mean I am heartless." She tickled the baby's belly. "Besides, how can anyone resist this face?" Nara watched her daughter laugh in the arms of a human, and she felt the last of her walls begin to crumble. One night when the children were asleep, Nara found Sung alone on the observation deck. He stood by the large window, looking out at the stars, a cup of something warm in his hands. "May I join you?" she asked. "Of course." She stood beside him, their reflections faint in the glass. For a long moment neither spoke. "I need to ask you something," Nara finally said. "Ask." "Why are you doing this? Why did you save us? Why are you helping us?" Sung was quiet for a moment. "I told you before where I come from." "No," Nara shook her head. "I need to understand more. Nothing is free. Every gift comes with a price. Every kindness is a debt to be collected. I have been waiting for you to tell me what you want from me, but you have not, and I do not understand." Sung turned to look at her. His eyes were sad and kind at the same time. "When I was young," he said, "there was a war in my country. My father was killed. My mother had to raise me and my two sisters alone. We had nothing. We were hungry, scared, without hope." Nara listened in silence. "One day a stranger came to our village, a soldier from another country, our enemy. My mother was terrified. She thought he would hurt us, but instead he gave us food. He gave us medicine for my sister who was sick. He stayed for 3 days, protected us from other soldiers, and then left without asking for anything. Why would an enemy do that?" I asked him the same question. Do you know what he said? Nara shook her head. "He said, because you needed help. What other reason could there be?" Sung looked back at the stars. "That man changed my life, not because of what he gave us, but because of what he taught me. He taught me that kindness is not a transaction. It is not about getting something back. It is about seeing someone in pain and choosing to help, simply because you can." Nara felt tears forming in her eyes. They would call that weakness. "Maybe, but I have traveled across the galaxy and met many species. The ones who survive, the ones who build things that last, they are not the cruel ones. They are the ones who help each other. Cruelty is easy. Kindness takes strength." I do not know if I can believe that. "You do not have to believe it tonight. Just give it time." They stood together in comfortable silence, watching the stars drift past. Nara thought about everything she had experienced in the past 2 weeks. The meals shared with the crew, the laughter of her daughters, the feeling of safety she had almost forgotten existed. "Can I tell you something?" she said quietly. "Of course. In all my years as Empress, no one ever treated me the way you and your crew have treated me. I was respected because of my title, feared because of my power, but no one ever," she struggled to find the words, "no one ever cared about me, about what I felt, about what I wanted." Sung said nothing, just listened. "When I had daughters instead of sons, everyone abandoned me. My friends, my servants, my family. Even my own mother said I had shamed our bloodline. I was alone, completely alone, with 3 children that the whole empire wanted dead." "You are not alone anymore," Sung said. Nara looked at him. This human, this strange being from a species her people considered primitive and weak. He had silver in his hair and lines around his eyes. He was not young, not handsome by standards. But when he looked at her, she felt seen. Not as an empress, not as a failed breeder, just as herself. "I am starting to believe that," she whispered. Sung smiled and held out his cup. "Would you like some tea? It is a human drink, helps with stress." Nara took the cup and tasted it. It was warm and slightly bitter, with a hint of sweetness. "It is good," she said. "I am glad you like it." They stood together until the stars changed position, two people from different worlds finding something neither expected. Peace, understanding, and perhaps the beginning of something more. Later, when Nara returned to her room, she found all three daughters sleeping in one bed. Had her arm around and held close. They looked peaceful, happy. Nara sat beside them and stroked hair. "We are going to be okay," she whispered. "I think we are finally going to be okay." For the first time since escaping, she believed it. The trading outpost of Station floated at the edge of neutral space, a massive structure built from old ships and salvaged metal. Thousands of traders, travelers, and wanderers passed through its corridors every day. It was the perfect place to buy supplies and disappear into the crowd. Or so Sung hoped. The wanderer docked at a small port on the station's lower levels. The plan was simple: get supplies, refuel, and leave within 6 hours. No attention, no problems. "Stay on the ship," Sung told Nara. "Keep the children inside. I will handle the supplies." Nara nodded, but her eyes were worried. "Be careful if they have tracked us." "They have not. We changed our route 3 times and avoided all major shipping lanes. There is no way they could find us here." But even as he said it, Sung felt uneasy. Something in the air felt wrong. He took 1 and 2 crew members to the marketplace. The station was busy, filled with aliens of every species. Humans were rare in this sector, and people stared at them with curiosity. Sung ignored the looks and focused on his task. They bought food, water, fuel cells, and medical supplies. Everything went smoothly. Too smoothly. Sung's military instincts screamed at him that something was wrong, but he could not identify what. Then he saw them. 3 soldiers standing at the edge of the marketplace, their silver armor gleaming under the station lights. They were not shopping. They were watching, searching. Sung kept his face calm. "1, we have a problem." "I see them, 3 soldiers at 2 o'clock. "There will be more. They do not travel in small groups." As if to prove his point, more soldiers appeared. 5, 8, a dozen. They moved through the crowd with purpose, checking faces, asking questions. "They are looking for her," one muttered. "We need to get back to the ship, now." They moved quickly but carefully, trying not to draw attention. The docking port was only 10 minutes away, if they could make it without being spotted. "Human." The voice was cold and commanding. Sung stopped. Slowly he turned around. A male stood before him, but this was no ordinary soldier. His armor was gold-trimmed, decorated with symbols of high rank. His face was handsome in a cruel way, with sharp features and eyes like ice. He looked at Sung the way a predator looks at prey. "You are the captain of the ship called Wanderer," the said. It was not a question. Sung met his gaze without flinching. "I am. I am High Commander Ho of the Empire. I believe you have something that belongs to me." So this was him, the mate who had ordered his own wife and children killed. Sung felt his anger rise but kept his voice steady. "I do not know what you mean." Ho smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. "Do not waste my time with lies, human. I have tracked the escape pod's energy signature across half the galaxy. I know the woman called Nara is on your ship. I know my offspring are with her." "Your offspring?" Sung could not hide the disgust in his voice. "You mean your daughters, the children you sentenced to death?" "They are defective, worthless. They carry weak blood and would pollute the royal line. Their execution is a matter of genetic purity." Sung stared at him. He had met evil men before, soldiers who committed terrible acts in the name of war. But he had never met someone who spoke about killing children with such casual coldness. "They are children," Sung said, "little girls who have done nothing wrong. They were born female. That is wrong enough." The marketplace had gone quiet. Dozens of aliens watched the confrontation, sensing the tension in the air. Ho's soldiers moved closer, hands on their weapons. "I am going to give you one chance, human." Ho stepped forward, towering over Sung. "Return my property to me, and you may leave this station alive. Refuse, and I will take your ship apart piece by piece and kill everyone on board." Sung looked at the soldiers surrounding him. 15, maybe 20, all armed, all trained. His crew had 3 people and no weapons. The math was simple. He could not win this fight. But some things mattered more than winning. "No." Ho's eyes narrowed. "What did you say?" "I said no." Sung stepped forward, closing the distance between them. "Nara is not your property. Her daughters are not your property. They are people with their own lives and their own value, and I will not hand them over to a monster who wants them dead. You are one human with a cargo ship. I have an army. You cannot stop me." "Maybe not." Sung met his gaze without fear. "But you will have to go through me first, and I promise you I will not make it easy." Ho studied him for a long moment. He had expected the human to surrender, to beg, to negotiate. He had not expected defiance. "You would die for strangers, for aliens who are not even your own species." "I would die for what is right, something you clearly do not understand." Ho's hand moved to his weapon. The soldiers raised their guns. Time seemed to stop. Then a new voice cut through the tension. "Commander Ho." A station security officer approached, flanked by a dozen armed guards. "You are causing a disturbance in a neutral zone. This is a violation of station law." Ho turned to the officer with barely concealed rage. "This is business. It does not concern you." "Everything that happens on this station concerns me. I am Chief Security Officer Park, and I am ordering you to stand down. Any violence here will result in the immediate seizure of your ships and arrest of your soldiers. You would dare threaten the Empire." "I am not threatening anyone. I am enforcing the law." Officer Park's voice was calm but firm. "They have no jurisdiction here. Whatever dispute you have, resolve it outside my station." The standoff held for several long seconds. Ho's soldiers waited for orders. The station guards waited for an excuse to act, and Sung waited, his heart pounding but his face showing nothing. Finally Ho stepped back. "This is not over, human." He spoke quietly for Sung's ears only. "I will find you. I will take back what is mine, and when I do, I will make you watch as I kill those worthless daughters one by one." Sung's fists clenched, but he forced himself to stay calm. "You can try, but know this, I have faced worse than you and survived. Come for them if you dare, but do not expect me to be alone." Ho laughed, a cold and empty sound. "Humans have no empire, no army, no power. Who would possibly help you? You would be surprised what humans can do when we believe in something." Ho turned and walked away, his soldiers following. Within minutes, they had disappeared into the crowd. Officer Park approached Sung. "Are you all right?" "Yes, thank you for the intervention." "Do not thank me yet. The will not give up. You need to leave this station immediately and go somewhere they cannot follow." Park paused. "Do I want to know what you are protecting?" Sung looked at him. "A mother and her children, that is all." Park nodded slowly. "Then go, and may whatever gods you believe in watch over you." Sung returned to the Wanderer at a run. When he burst onto the ship, Nara was waiting, fear written across her face. "I saw the soldiers from the window. Was it?" "Ho, yes, he found us." Sung moved to the control room, already preparing for departure. "We are leaving now. Get us out of here as fast as possible." "Where are we going?" Sung looked at Nara, at the terror in her violet eyes, at the children clinging to her legs. "Human space," he said. "We are going home." The Wanderer flew through space at maximum speed, pushing its old engines to the limit. Behind them, somewhere in the darkness, the fleet followed. Their ships were faster, stronger, and more advanced. It was only a matter of time before they caught up. Sung had not slept in 2 days. He sat in the captain's chair, watching the star maps, calculating routes, looking for any advantage. One worked beside him, her face tired but determined. "They are gaining on us," she reported. "At current speed, they will catch us in 18 hours. How far to the border of human space? 26 hours. The math was cruel. They would be caught 8 hours before reaching safety. "Can we go any faster?" Sung asked. "Not without burning out the engines completely, and even then maybe we gain 2 hours. Not enough." Nara stood at the doorway listening. She had heard everything. Her face was pale and her hands trembled slightly. "This is my fault," she said quietly. "All of this, if I had not come on your ship." "Then you and your daughters would be dead," Sung interrupted. "Do not blame yourself for surviving." "But your crew, your ship, everyone will die because of me." "No one is dying today." Sung stood up and faced her. "We will find a way, we always do." But even as he said it, he was not sure he believed it. The hours passed slowly. The children sensed the tension and stayed quiet, helped in the kitchen, keeping busy to avoid thinking, sat in the corner with her notebook, not writing, just holding it. Even Ah seemed subdued, her usual laughter replaced by silence. Sung spent every moment searching for solutions. He contacted nearby stations, but none would help. He looked for shortcuts through dangerous space, but the risk was too high. He considered surrendering himself to buy time for the others, but Ho would not accept anything less than Nara and the children. There seemed to be no way out. Late in the night, one found something. "Captain," her voice was strange. "I have been reviewing law, looking for any loophole we might use. I think I found something." Sung looked up. "What?" "According to tradition, an empress can only be reclaimed by her original empire unless—" One paused. "Unless she has been claimed by another sovereign power through marriage." "Marriage?" "If Nara is married to a leader of a recognized dominion, she becomes property of that dominion. They cannot touch her without starting a war with her new people." Sung frowned. "And how does that help us? I know no kings or leaders." "Humanity has no single leader, but according to galactic law, any citizen can claim to represent their species in matters of personal alliance. If a human claimed her through marriage, she would be under the protection of all humanity." One met his eyes. "They would have to go to war with the entire human race to take her back." The room went silent. Nara had entered during the conversation. She stood frozen, understanding exactly what one was suggesting. "You cannot be serious," she said. One shrugged. "I am just explaining the law. What happens next is not my decision." Everyone looked at Sung. He felt the weight of their gazes, the weight of the moment. His mind raced through the implications. Marriage to an alien empress, taking responsibility for her and her children, making himself a target for the empire forever. It was insane. It was dangerous. It was probably the worst decision he could possibly make. He looked at Nara, at her silver skin and violet eyes, at the strength she carried despite everything she had endured, at the mother who had risked everything to save her daughters. In the weeks since she had come aboard, something had changed inside him. He admired her courage. He respected her spirit. And somewhere along the way, admiration had become something deeper. "Nara," he said slowly, "can I speak with you alone?" They walked to the observation deck, the same place where they had shared tea and talked under the stars. The window showed the darkness of space, the distant lights of stars they might never reach. "I need to be honest with you," Sung said. "I am not doing this just to save you." Nara waited. "When you came onto my ship, you were a stranger, a refugee, someone who needed help, but now—" he struggled to find the words. "Now you are more than that. I have watched you care for your daughters with more love than I have ever seen. I have watched you rebuild yourself from nothing, finding strength when anyone else would have given up. You are extraordinary, Nara, and I have come to care for you in a way I did not expect." Nara's eyes glistened. Sung, I am not a king. I have no throne, no army, no power. I am just a cargo captain with a tired ship and a small crew. But if you would have me, he paused, then continued. If you would have me, I would spend the rest of my life protecting you and your daughters. Not because of duty, not because of law, because I want to. You barely know me. I know enough. I know you are brave. I know you are kind. I know that when you look at your children, you see treasures, not burdens. He took her hand. In my eyes, you are already an empress. The only question is whether you would accept me as your partner. Nara felt tears streaming down her face. She had been married before to a man who saw her as property, a tool for producing heirs. She had sworn she would never let anyone have power over her again. But this was different. Sung was not asking for power. He was offering partnership, protection, something that looked very much like love. What about your life? She asked. Your freedom, if you do this, they will hunt you too, forever. Let them come. Sung's voice was steady. I have lived a long life with no real purpose, running cargo from station to station, just existing. But these past weeks with you and the girls, I have felt more alive than I have in 20 years. If this is how I spend my remaining days, protecting people I love, then it is a good way to live. You said love. I did. He met her eyes without hesitation. It is too soon, I know. We have only known each other for weeks, but I know what I feel, and I know I will never forgive myself if I let you and your daughters die without trying everything to save you. Nara was silent for a long moment. The stars drifted past the window. Somewhere behind them, a fleet of ships hunted them with murder in their hearts. Ahead, an uncertain future waited. But here, in this moment, there was only this man, this human, this impossibly brave, impossibly kind person who had given her something she thought she had lost forever. Hope, trust, the possibility of happiness. My daughters, she said softly, you would take them as your own. They would be my daughters too, in every way that matters. Even though they are not human, even though the galaxy will see them as aliens, as outsiders. The galaxy can see whatever it wants. To me they are, they are curious and smart and full of life. They deserve a father who values them. If you allow me, I would be honored to be that father. Nara's last defense crumbled. The walls she had built, the fears she had carried, the distrust that had protected her heart, all of it faded away. She stepped forward and took his other hand. Yes, she whispered, I accept you, Sung, as my partner, as my husband, as the father of my children. Sung smiled, a real smile that lit up his tired face. Then let us tell Ho the good news. 1 hour later, Sung stood before the ship's communication console. He broadcast on all frequencies, knowing the fleet would hear every word. This is Captain Sung of the human cargo vessel Wanderer. I am broadcasting to the Empire and to any other ships that can hear me. The woman called Nara, former Empress of, is now my wife and is under the protection of humanity. Her daughters are my daughters. Any attack on them is an attack on the human race. We will not surrender. We will not negotiate. We will not run. Come for us if you dare, but know that humanity protects its own. He ended the transmission and looked at Nara, who stood beside him with her daughters. Now, he said, we wait and see how they respond. The answer came quickly. The fleet did not slow down. They accelerated. The fleet closed in like a pack of wolves surrounding wounded prey. 12 warships, each one bigger and stronger than the Wanderer. Their weapons were powered and ready. Their message was clear. Surrender or die. Sung sat in the captain's chair, his face calm despite the fear churning in his stomach. Nara stood beside him, holding Ah in her arms, and sat in the corner, their faces pale but brave. The entire crew had gathered in the control room, waiting for what came next. The communication panel buzzed. Ho's face appeared on the screen. A touching speech, human. His voice dripped with contempt. Did you really think your little declaration would stop me? Humanity has no power here. You have no fleet, no weapons, no way to fight. Your words are empty." "Words are never empty," Sung replied. "Words have power. They can inspire, unite, transform. They can also be the last sounds a fool makes before he dies." Ho leaned forward. "I am giving you one final chance. Hand over my mate and my offspring and I will let your crew go. Refuse, and I will kill everyone on that ship, slowly and painfully." Sung looked at Nara. She met his gaze without fear, without regret. She had made her choice. He turned back to the screen. "She is not your mate anymore. She is my wife. Those children are not your offspring. They are my daughters, and I will die before I let you touch them." Ho's face twisted with rage. "Then you will die." The screen went dark. "They are powering weapons," one reported, her voice tight. "Impact in 3 minutes." Sung closed his eyes. He had done everything he could. He had fought, planned, hoped. But sometimes hope was not enough. "I am sorry," he said quietly. "I wish I could have done more." Nara took his hand. "You did everything, more than anyone else ever has. Whatever happens next, I want you to know, these weeks with you have been the happiest of my life." "Mine too." They held hands and waited for the end. 1 minute passed, then 2. No weapons fired. One frowned at her console. "Captain, something strange is happening. The fleet has stopped." "What do you mean, stopped?" "They have powered down their weapons. They are holding position." Before Sung could respond, the communication panel lit up again. But this time, it was not Ho's face that appeared. It was a human woman in a military uniform. Behind her, through a window, Sung could see the bridge of a warship. "Captain Sung of the Wanderer, this is Admiral Gi of the Earth Defense Fleet. We received your transmission. Do not worry. Help has arrived." Sung could not speak. He just stared at the screen in disbelief. "Check your scanners," Admiral Gi continued. One's hands flew across the controls. What she saw made her gasp. Ships, dozens of ships, coming out of hyperspace all around them. But they were not warships. They were human vessels. Cargo freighters, mining ships, patrol boats, private yachts, science vessels, transport cruisers, every type of ship imaginable, flying every flag and banner humanity had. They poured out of hyperspace like water through a broken dam, surrounding the fleet from all directions. "How?" Sung whispered. "How is this possible?" Admiral Gi smiled. "Your broadcast went wide, Captain. Every human ship within 50 light-years heard it. A mother hunted for having daughters. Children sentenced to death for being female. A fellow human standing alone against an empire." Her smile faded into something harder. "We could not ignore that." The ships kept coming. 50, 100, 200. Some were military, armed and ready for battle. Others were civilian vessels with no weapons at all. But they came anyway. They came because they heard the story and could not stay away. Sung looked at the sea of ships surrounding them and felt tears forming in his eyes. He had hoped someone would help. He had never expected this. On the flagship, Ho stared at his tactical display with growing horror. His 12 warships were now surrounded by over 300 human vessels. Some were nothing but transport pods, but others were battle cruisers, destroyers, and carriers. The combined firepower was enough to destroy his entire fleet several times over. "This is impossible," he muttered. "Humans do not have this many ships in this sector." "They came from everywhere, Commander." His tactical officer's voice shook. "Some traveled for days at emergency speed. They burned out their engines to get here." "Why? She is not even human. Those children are not human. Why would they come for strangers?" The officer had no answer. Admiral Gi's voice broadcast on all frequencies. "High Commander Ho, you are targeting a ship carrying a human citizen and his family. Any aggressive action will be considered an act of war against the human race. I strongly advise you to withdraw." Ho's hands clenched. He had never been like this. He had never been surrounded, outnumbered, made to feel powerless. The humiliation burned like acid. You would go to war for one woman, for 3 worthless children. We would go to war for principle. Your empire believes daughters are worthless. We believe they are priceless. Your empire kills children for being born female. We protect them with everything we have. Admiral Guy's voice was iron. That is the difference between us. You are fools, all of you, when my empire hears of this. Your empire will hear that 300 human ships answered a call to protect children. They will hear that humanity stands together against anyone who threatens our own, and they will think very carefully before they ever threaten us again. The silence stretched for a long moment. Ho looked at his fleet. He looked at the human armada. He calculated odds, considered strategies, weighed options. He was a military commander. He knew when a battle was lost. And this battle was lost the moment the first human ship appeared. "This is not over," he said finally. "The woman and her spawn are still. I will find a way to reclaim them." "You are welcome to try through legal channels," Admiral Guy replied. "But any attempt to take them by force will be met with overwhelming response. Are we clear?" Ho said nothing. He simply gave the order to withdraw. The fleet turned and disappeared into hyperspace. One moment they were there, a deadly threat. The next they were gone. For a long moment, no one on the Wanderer moved. Then small voice broke the silence. "Did we win?" Sung laughed, a sound full of relief and joy and wonder. "Yes, little one, we won." The control room erupted in cheers. One hugged the nearest crew member. Minho cried openly. Even the quiet, serious girl smiled for the first time in weeks. Nara stood frozen, staring at the screen, at the hundreds of ships that had come to save her daughters, strangers from a species she had been taught to see as weak and insignificant. "Why," she whispered, "why would they do this? They do not even know us." Admiral Guy heard her question. "Madam, I flew 18 hours at emergency speed to get here. I burned out 2 engine cores. I will be in trouble with my superiors for weeks." She smiled. "And I would do it again in a heartbeat, because that is who we are. We do not leave people behind. We do not let children die. We stand up for what is right, even when it costs us. Even for aliens. Especially for aliens. How we treat strangers shows who we really are. And we choose to be the kind of people who protect mothers and children, regardless of what planet they come from." Nara felt her legs give out. Sung caught her and held her as she wept. She wept for the years of fear and loneliness. She wept for the daughters she had almost lost. She wept for the kindness she had never expected to find. And she wept for the beautiful, impossible species that had crossed the stars to save her. Outside the window, the human fleet held formation, a wall of metal and determination between her and anyone who would do her harm. For the first time in her life, Nara truly felt safe. 1 year had passed since the standoff with the fleet. 1 year since humanity had stood together to protect a mother and her daughters. 1 year that changed everything. Nara stood in a garden on Earth, surrounded by flowers she had never seen before. The sky above was blue, dotted with white clouds. A gentle breeze carried the scent of grass and rain. It was so different from the cold metal corridors of ships, so different from the endless darkness of space. It was beautiful, it was home. Nearby, her daughters played on the grass, sat under a tree reading a book. She had grown so much in the past year, becoming a thoughtful young woman instead of the frightened child who had hidden in a cargo pod. She had friends now, human children who did not care that she had silver skin and violet eyes. She was learning to cook from Minho, who visited every month to teach her new recipes. She smiled more. She laughed more. She was happy. Ran across the garden, chasing a small flying device. The curious girl had become obsessed with flying. She was enrolled in a junior flight academy, the youngest student in her class. Her teachers said she had natural talent, an instinct for navigation that came from somewhere deep inside her. She talked constantly about becoming a pilot, about exploring the stars, about discovering new worlds. No one told her she could not. No one told her that daughters were not meant to fly. Now 3 years old, toddled across the grass with unsteady legs. She was learning to talk, mixing human words with words in a way that made everyone laugh. She had no memory of the escape, no memory of the fear and darkness. To her, Earth was the only home she had ever known. Sung was the only father she had ever known. Sung, Nara smiled as she thought of him. He was inside the house, probably making tea. He had retired from cargo hauling 6 months ago, using his savings to buy a small home near the ocean. He spent his days gardening, cooking, and teaching the girls everything he knew. He was patient and kind and endlessly loving. He told terrible jokes that made groan and roll her eyes and giggle even though she did not understand them. He was everything Nara had never known a partner could be. Their marriage had started as a strategy, a way to save their lives. But over the past year it had become something real, something deep and true. They shared breakfast together every morning. They talked for hours every night. They disagreed about small things and agreed about important things. They learned each other's fears and dreams and secrets. They fell in love, truly, completely, forever. The galaxy had changed too. News of what happened at the standoff spread across the stars. The story was told and retold, growing with each telling. A mother hunted for having daughters, a human who called her his Empress. 300 ships that answered the call. Other species began to take notice. Refugees started arriving at the borders of human space. Alien mothers with unwanted daughters, families fleeing oppressive regimes, children who had been cast out for being different. They came because they heard that humans protected people. They came because they heard that on Earth, daughters were treasures. The human government did not know what to do at first. The refugees were alien, strange, sometimes difficult to understand. Some people wanted to turn them away, to close the borders, to focus only on human problems. But others remembered the story of Nara and her daughters. They remembered that humanity had stood together for strangers. They argued that if Earth was truly different from the cruel empires of the galaxy, it had to prove it by welcoming those in need. In the end, compassion won. Earth became known as a haven, a place where the forgotten could find hope, a small planet on the edge of the galaxy that treated every life as valuable, regardless of species or gender or circumstance. The Empire, meanwhile, had fallen into chaos. News of Ho's humiliation spread quickly. A human fleet had made him retreat. A species with no empire had stood against him and won. His reputation was destroyed. His enemies saw weakness and attacked. 6 months after the standoff, Ho was overthrown in a coup. His own officers betrayed him, tired of his obsession with chasing a fugitive wife instead of governing the empire. He was last seen fleeing into exile, hunted by the same forces he once commanded. The new leadership was different. They saw what had happened to Ho and understood that the old ways were failing. Slowly, carefully, they began to reform. The laws against daughters were questioned. The traditions that valued only sons were challenged. It would take generations to truly change, but the seeds had been planted. All because one human refused to let a mother and her children die. Nara heard footsteps behind her and turned. Sung walked across the garden carrying 2 cups of tea. His hair was grayer than when they first met, his face more lined. But his eyes were the same. Kind, steady, full of warmth. "You looked deep in thought," he said, handing her a cup. "What were you thinking about?" "Everything, the past year. How much has changed?" "Good changes. The best changes," she smiled at him. "I was also thinking about you." "Me? What about me?" "About how lucky I am." She took his hand. "A year ago I was dying in a cargo pod, certain my daughters would never see another sunrise. Now I am standing in a garden on a beautiful planet, watching them play, married to a man who loves me. It still feels like a dream sometimes." Sung squeezed her hand. If it is a dream, I hope we never wake up. They stood together watching their daughters, looked up from her book and waved, shouted something about flying higher. Ah fell down, got back up, and kept toddling forward with determination. Do you ever regret it? Nara asked softly. Saving us, marrying me, giving up your freedom. Never, not for a single moment. Sung looked at her with absolute certainty. Before you came into my life, I existed. I flew from place to place, earned money, spent money, repeated the cycle, but I was not living, not really. And now I have a purpose, a family, a reason to wake up every morning. He turned to face her fully. You and the girls are the best thing that ever happened to me. I would do it all again. Every choice, every risk, every moment of fear. It was all worth it. Nara felt tears in her eyes, happy tears, the kind she had learned to embrace instead of hide. I love you, she said. I love you too. He leaned forward and kissed her forehead. Always. Came running over, her flying device clutched in her hands. Father, mother, look what I can do. She pressed a button, and the device shot into the sky, performing loops and spirals before landing perfectly back in her palm. That was wonderful, Sung said. You are getting better every day. I am going to be the best pilot in the galaxy, declared. I believe you. Walked over with Ah on her hip. The baby reached for Sung and he took her, lifting her onto his shoulders. Ah laughed with delight. Can we have dinner outside tonight? Asked. The sunset is supposed to be beautiful. That sounds perfect, Nara said. I will help you prepare. The family walked toward the house together, dancing ahead, beside her mother, Sung carrying Ah and making her giggle with each step. The setting sun painted the sky in shades of gold and pink. Nara looked at her family, at the life she had built from nothing, at the happiness she had never expected to find. She thought about her past, about the empire that had rejected her, about the mate who had wanted her dead, about the laws that said daughters were worthless. They were wrong, all of them, so completely, absolutely wrong. Her daughters were not worthless. They were the most precious things in the universe, and she had found a people who understood that, a species that looked at her children and saw value instead of shame. She was no longer the Empress of. She had no throne, no palace, no power. But she was something better. She was Nara, wife of Sung, mother of and Ah, a woman who had crossed the stars and found a home among strangers. A human had called her his alien Empress, and in doing so, he had given her something more valuable than any crown. A future. That night, as the stars came out and the family ate dinner in the garden, Nara made a wish. Not on the stars this time, but on the hearts of the people beside her. Let this last, she prayed. Let this happiness continue. Let my daughters grow up knowing they are loved. Let me wake up every morning beside the man who saved us. Let me spend my life grateful for this second chance. The stars twinkled overhead, the same stars she had once prayed to in a dying pod. This time, she felt they were listening. This time, she knew they would answer.